welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamila Creates. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamila and this is Jamila Creates, where we create beautiful things. So for today we are doing mold making. This is step 2 or 3 or 100 of me making a, drum roll please, making notions out of recycled plastic. So in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use mold putty to make molds that you will then put your molted plastic in, or you could use it for almost anything. So yeah, let's get to it. So the first thing that you're going to need is mold putty. Mine was the amazing mold putty from Walmart. Make sure you follow the directions because it could be a 1-to-1 ratio or it could be something different. Mine was a 1 part to 1 part ratio. A button for reference. And then I 3D printed this mold for reference, or this chain link for reference, because I want to make a mold out of it. But you can use anything. Like I have that O-ring there that can fit around my thumb. That's very important to me with what we're doing today. And I have a little alien button. I'm gonna have to fix some of these to make them work a little bit better with the plastic that I'm using, but I just want to show y'all the basics, and then I can show y'all me using a thicker method. And I actually figured out that you can use clay to model your original object and then put mold putty around it, and then when you take out the clay from the mold putty it'll probably break, but that's a far more efficient way to do that. And here's me just opening each part of the mold putty. Again, it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so as much of the yellow that I get out, I need to get an equal amount of the white. And then you spend about a minute mixing them together, and I learned later that what you want to do is like fold them together constantly until there are no more swirls in them. Once you have your putty fully mixed up, what you want to do is place your object into it. What I did was I kind of pushed it into it, and I think you want to work it in a little bit more, taking the thickest part that lays out and putting that face down in the putty. If there's a part that you want flat, that should be on top, and I'm just kind of molding it around the chain link. I ended up changing this for a couple of these, but I think that was the best strategy for plastic smithing, at least, because it's good to have something holding that in there. So here's the demolding process. I did end up having to cut the shapes out of the parchment paper because it was stuck. You can layer petroleum jelly on the bottom or on top of the paper before you put the putty on to eliminate this, but I found it easier just to have the paper be part of it. You can see I'm trying to rip it off, but that won't work. So yeah, you could just clean it up with an X-Acto knife, and then you want to pop the reference object out. The 3D printed one holds up so well to just being basically ripped out, but I tried to be careful and kind of ease it out. Anything but clay is going to pop out pretty easily. The clay, you'll see in a minute, I had some issues with, but as for this, I just kind of pulled it out or popped it out, and I ended up adding a little bit of mold putty to like the seam at the side of the chain just to make sure that it actually has an opening. That's pretty easy. You just mix up a tiny bit of mold putty and just kind of stick it in there and wait for it to dry before you use it. But yeah, sorry, this is out of frame, but you can see this is what it looks like. It looks a little rough, but it works very well. Alright, so for some of these, I found that it would be easier to just use air dry clay for my original concept, and then put that through the mold. Now, keep in mind that the air dry clay will probably crack under the mold. I've done this a few times, and most of them have cracked. So keep that in mind, and this is just me making my basic shape with air dry clay. I made a few of these shapes before realizing that they were a little bit thin. So, and that was because I'm using this for plastic smithing. If you're using this for like resin or something, it'll probably be fine. But since I was using this for plastic specifically, it shrinks a lot when you put it in the mold. So I had to remake the clay assets to be twice as thick. I haven't tested those out yet, but I think they'll work fine. And I'll show you a really brief snippet of those at the end of this clip. As for molding these, it's the same as anything else. It's just that when you demold them, they'll probably crack and you'll have to break them off in pieces. So you're supposed to use petroleum jelly for this, but all I found was this. And it's expired in 2021, so I don't feel bad about wasting it. The idea is to take 2 halves of something like this where you need detail on both sides and just kind of make a 2-part make a 2-part mold putty in like one step. I'm going to test it right now before I use it and see if it actually works. So I'm not going to put anything in this mold. I'm just going to make the tiniest amount of mold putty, wait for it to dry, and then see. Oh, maybe I do have to put something in for this test to work. I'll put like a pin or something in it. Put a pin in it. That sounded punny. And then I'm just gonna see if that works. So let's say hypothetically we wanted to do this for some reason. Just gonna let it dry like this. Put the skin cream over here and see what happens. Oh shoot, I turned off the camera. Well, I already mixed up the putty and put the carved side down on this. And put a few little indents on the head of, using the head of a pin for these. So now I'm just gonna wait for this part to dry and then use this stuff as a coating to put the next layer on. So as you can see, it's all dry now, and I'm just taking that skin cream stuff and I'm putting a thick layer of it all over the yellow parts of the mold putty. I did get it on the poodle a little bit, so I did have to wipe it off, because your main objective is to make sure that the yellow part, the mold part, is completely coated and not going to stick to itself. Because of the way the putty is made, it'll stick to itself, but it won't, or it shouldn't stick to anything else. You'll see later that the clay was kind of in there, but it wasn't stuck to it the way that it gets with itself and with parchment paper, apparently. So yeah, I'm just coating it now. And then I'm going to be putting another piece of mold putty on top of it, and it should form itself into a little pocket there. I'm just removing everything from the mold, the thicker clay, at least you can see that it's falling apart, and that'll do it for our video. Thanks so much for watching, and to see these molds in action, make sure to catch the next video I will be uploading about the plastic smithing. So please subscribe because it helps the channel so much, and please like this video if you did like it, and you are free to come back for more. Thanks for watching, and I will be putting a way to make 3D molds at the end of this video, because it turned out that it wasn't the best idea for plastic smithing specifically, um, because it just doesn't really work because the filament in 3D printing is also plastic, so it would have melted that along with it. Um, and this silicone putty has a higher melting point. But I will show you anyways how to do that because I said I would. So yeah, that'll be bonus content after this video. So please stay tuned for the next part, and as always, happy crafting! Alright, so we are in Blender, and we have the basic shape that we want to copy is this button. You'll see them messing with the visibility just to make sure I have the correct buttons. Because I took the original button and just copy and pasted it a couple of times, just to make sure that I had, enough of them. And now I'm doing Control or Shift A, adding a cube, and I'm going to want to flatten that. Also, a good point to note is to do this in inches if you're used to inches, just so that you know your 3D printer's capabilities and you are making sure that you are going under that. I made a big deal of doing that, but actually when you 3D print, there's another software you go through that'll let you resize it again. But it's a good idea to model after the size that you have in mind. Write that down, and you may have to go in and resize it before you size it up again. Now I'm just making sure that the cube I have is flattened so that it takes up half of the button and is within the button size, just making it a little bit more reasonable. You're going to end up with two cubes, one for the bottom half of the button and one for the top. So you can see I'm toggling visibility and going to the side view to make sure that my buttons are properly aligned. Now I'm just pushing it down so that's halfway. You want to make sure that it's really specifically halfway before you do this. And that'll leave the imprint of half of it. And then I'm just copying the basic rectangle to use for later, and just pushing it above, and then I'm going to the original rectangle. You want to make sure that your buttons are in a collection so that when you go to this cube and go to modifiers and Boolean, you can just go ahead and instead of doing it one by one, did something wrong there, hang on, there, Boolean, instead of doing it one by one, you go to collection and you select your collection of buttons. I have a lot of collections to scroll through, give me a second here. Okay, you select your collection of buttons. Yes. And then you apply it. You have to hit apply before anything happens or else you won't really see the effect there. Why am I taking so long? There. Okay. And then you can scooch it down and you'll see that the imprint of the buttons are there. And you're just going to want to push the buttons up to the second rectangle in order to do the same thing there, or push the second rectangle down to the buttons while toggling visibility. Either one works, just make sure it cuts halfway again. And again, going to modifiers, Boolean, collection, and buttons. Alright, and now that I've done that and deleted the buttons because we don't need them anymore, we add another cube, and I'm just going to be sizing that cube down into a square. Well, more of a rectangle really, and we're going to be using that to make our cube. Now there was no measurements associated with this so much as I just kind of eyeballed it, I also saw a tutorial for how to do this, and I just did what looked correct. It does matter what's on the z-axis though, because you want it to go like halfway through the first cube, that cube there, but you don't want to go all the way through, or else there's going to be a problem with, it'll be a hole in your mold, so you don't want that. And I'm just checking on every viewpoint there and lining it up. Now that it's lined up, I'm going to make it go into a corner, and you want to keep track of the measurements it is from the corner, which is why you want your whole molds to be at the center. And that's because you want them to be as lined up as possible. So I'm lining this up just in the corner there. I'm not going to read out the numbers because my view of this is much smaller than your view of this, so I can't really see the exact numbers that I use. They don't really matter, you just want them to be the same or reflected. And just pushing that out of my way and taking every angle to just make sure that they're all right. Now that I have it in the corner where I want it, I'm just adjusting that. I put it up a little bit so that we can change the basic shape. And we're going to do this by going to, I can't read what it was I went to, but you saw it on the screen. And just adjusting it until it looks perfectly blended like a key. I believe it was distort and taper. Yeah, we're tapering this. And then we apply that, and then we want to just smooth it out a little bit. That is way too much. So we bring the offsets up, or we bring the segments up, and how much we want smooth by way down. This might be different depending on your software, but I'm just doing whatever looks smooth and whatever looks good. So that's what I ended up going with. And the 5 segments, I think that just looks the best. Of course, we want to apply that. And then we go to side view, toggle visibility again. And this is really important. Make sure that this one is specifically halfway into the original mold cube, using that orange dot as a visual reference. And this is actually upside down. I'm going to be rotating it because you want the big part to be like the keyhole, the opening, and then the small part goes into the key. So yeah, I'm going to have to be rotating this, but I think I copied, I duplicated it first, put that in the other corner, and duplicated just Shift-D, left click, and then use the move tools, and I just use the same measurement for the green y-axis and did a same measurement for the red axis and the same measurement for the green and did a flip for the red, sorry. And then I'm going to be rotating these later, but first I have to copy them to the other side and do a Boolean modifier. And now that these are the same, I'm just selecting both of them and copying them with Shift-D, left click, and then click and drag the move tools, and then I'm making sure that they're the correct measurements on the side. Just so that they form a perfect square. Yep. And then I'm going to be flipping them. I'm just trying to test out which axis flips them the way I want, and then copying the way I want them flipped was by 180. And then I'm going to be either memorizing or saving them to their own thing. Yeah, so I'm grabbing the originals and pushing them up so that they don't become booleaned, and then making sure that the keys are in their own collection. I'm clicking on the cube, going to modifiers and boolean, and then collection, and clicking on keys. And the ones I dragged up won't have an effect on the rest of them because they're not aligned anymore. And instead of deleting the keys when I'm done, I'm just going to drag them up and have them attached to the top. Of course, gotta apply that Boolean modifier. There we go. And now I'm just going to be taking these and dragging them up for the next piece to use. And then these I'm going to be putting back onto the plane. And I do want to rotate them as well, and I believe I'll figure that out in just a second when I go, wait a minute. Isn't the tapered end supposed to be sticking out? Yes. So the wide end is the keyhole, and then the tapered part is sticking up as the key. And if I don't realize that and mess up that mold, I just want you to know that it's very important that the tapered part is the key and the round part is the keyhole. Yep, I'm rotating it by 180 degrees on both of the keys. And at that point you can join these three pieces or you can wait. I think I waited and just pushed up the other two, rotated them. Oh, I waited so that I could duplicate those and also put the top piece as one. So Shift E, make sure it's only going up on the Z axis. And then we're doing pretty much the same thing to the upper piece. So now that we have that upper piece, we're just taking the keys and putting them where they belong on this part of the mold too. So that's halfway. Using that orange dot as, well, its origin point as a guide. And then I'm taking the other side too. And this is toggled visibility. Excuse me, I'm not editing that out. This is toggled visibility, so that's why you can see it looks kind of funny there, but it is correct. So I'm just perfecting the keys there, and those will be the keys, and the other side will be the keyholes. No, those will be the keyholes, and the other side will be the keys. So there will be flipping that has to be done, and I'm doing it right now. I'm just arranging those to 0 and taking them and pushing them straight up. If you have them lined up correctly in the first place, you shouldn't have to reposition them on the top mold. Just, using only one axis, in this case the Z axis. And right now I am using those keys on the left side to create a keyhole just the same way I did on the bottom. With the Boolean modifier, go to collection and select keys. You have to make your own collections, by the way. They don't just suddenly appear. But that's pretty easy. Alright, now hitting apply. And we can delete those, so they are no longer needed. And then we scooch up these keys, and that will be the last thing that we have to do. You can group them. It's not really necessary for printing. Actually, I haven't printed key molds. I haven't printed molds. So maybe it is necessary for printing. You probably should group them. That's just a left click and group or join. But yeah, those are the finished molds, and I'll show you a few examples of my 3D molds. I haven't printed them because it turns out I didn't need them, but that is how you do it.